everybody ready to get started? This is the smallest crowd I think we've had in quite some time. I guess everybody's at Blink tonight, huh? I don't know. So, they could be. So as we say, we want to thank the City of Wilder for allowing us to use the room here. We greatly appreciate that. Richard, you want to cover minutes of last minute?
Last month, we met here at the Wilder City Building, 35 people in attendance to hear the essay contest winners. Steve welcomed members and guests at 7:06 and thanked the City of Wilder for their kindness in allowing the society to use their building. He announced that Wilder was going to have a senior picnic on September 23rd and needed guests to RSVP beforehand. No minutes from the August membership meeting. The secretary's kind of a slacker and missed that meeting. So, Glenn Elsner gave a treasurer's report showing an ending balance of $10,879.62. I gave the donations report, including a new calf Thanksgiving dinner sign from 1948, at least half of it donated by Don Lovers. Sheila Everson gave an Army Cadet uniform blouse, and Dr. Stephen Scott gave a bunch of small items from the practice of Dr. Howe in Alexandria. Jan Lester reported membership at 302. We reached our 300 goal. She reported the September edition of the newsletter had mailed, and that the next newsletter would be January 2023, with articles due to her by December 1st. She confirmed that she replied to several email inquiries and informed visitors of she told visitors at the meeting of Sam Terry's Kentucky website Facebook page because it contains a lot of interesting information almost every day. Steve announced that the society gained more volunteers who were working on Spears Hospital books, and they started using the courtroom on the first floor of the courthouse just for accessibility. He informed everybody that the online store section of the society's website would be completed within a couple days. The Christmas tree fundraiser update was that 10 trees had been sold so far, and other people had promised to purchase one. Purchased before September 15th received a $5 discount, and the lighting ceremony will be on November 27th. October 25th is the deadline to purchase the tree. Grants Lake 225th Homecoming event will be on September 17th. Activities from 9 to 3 all day. The Campbell County Senior Picnic will be on September 28th at Penry Park. Steve announced that the sale of the James Taylor Mansion in Newport was imminent, with just waiting on closing. The Ludlow Historical Society had a deal with the railroad to use an old building for their museum, but of course they didn't raise the funds. That minor little detail. Steve informed everybody that a volunteer was working on rearranging the museum exhibits and had updated the Alexandria Fair display, and this was pretty satisfactory to Dan Shadler, who had donated his grandmother's ribbons for the display. He came in town and saw it and liked what he saw. Newport Art and Music Festival will be October 1st. Then at 7:34, Steve turned the meeting over to Martha Pelfrey, who introduced the essay contest winners who were in attendance and who read their essays and received their prizes. The next meeting will feature Hite from the Voice of America Museum here at Wilder. The meeting adjourned at 7:56.
Very good. You want to go ahead and do all your stuff?
Donations in the last month, Ken Reese dropped off a couple of items: a 2012 Campbell County Forest Canopy Map, Ohio River Handbook, a book, Stockades in the Wilderness, the Frontier Defense and Settlements of Southwestern Ohio, 1788 to 1795, and Robert Webster's recent book on the Bellevue Hills Supper Club. We didn't have a copy of that, so that was a good addition. Paul Whalen donated his father's Air Force dress jacket. Charlie Rimmers donated booklets from the 1970 Bellevue Centennial, 2 different books from that. And Brenda Spade donated a sign from the Cobblestone Inn in Fort Thomas, which had closed. And also today I had contact with the History Day Committee. They're apparently looking for a date to hold 2023 History Day at the Erlacher Library. So it's not a big update, but it's more than we've heard in the last couple of years, and I'll let you know anything else I hear.
We opened the month with $10,879.62. Had 5 new members and 3 renewals. $103 in donations, $700 in donations for our essay contest. sold $1 in copies, sold $315 in publication sales. Amazon Smile donations came in at $19.64. $100 for the building fund. Internet technology sponsor renewed for $50. $490 for Christmas tree fundraiser. So the net income was $1,854.97. And we bought toner for the front office, paper for the newsletter, hardware for shelving, paid the copier lease, and paid the final payment to the foster group for the website completion. So expenses were $1,343.05. So we ended the month with $11,391.54.
Membership is up to about 311 members, which is a really good thing. Anybody who isn't current on their dues, pay us and we'll get you updated. $12 a year is all it takes to be a member. I think everybody here probably already is, but if not, you can pay Glenn tonight. Newsletter, next one will be out December. It'll be the December issue. It'll probably be, it'll be the January issue. It'll be out at the end of December. If you've got anything you want into the newsletter, get it to me by the 1st of December so that I can get the newsletter put together and have it out. Usually I do it the week between Christmas and New Year's. So, communications, we've had one, lot of requests that we get, and we just answer and we do some research if we can and help people out. But we recently got a request from the Kenton County DAR, Daughters of the American Revolution group. They are preparing to have a memorial stone marker for 40 Revolutionary War patriots that they have found were in Kenton County. But a lot of them, it was Campbell County until 1840. So a lot of those men we have records of here in Campbell County. So they're going to have 40 patriots' names put on a marker, but in order for the National DAR to approve it, they have to go through a lot of paperwork and proving that these men, but most of them are already in the DAR, they're already known as patriots. They just have to prove that their name is right and whatever they're putting on this marker is correct. So they contacted us and said, we've done all the work, we need someone to review it who's maybe familiar with genealogy or, an officer in your society or something that can verify that the work we've done is correct. I said, I'll do that. So she's sending me 2 at a time, and I'm looking over all the paperwork, and it's like, I know these men because they were all Campbell County originally. So it's not hard to do, and I've drafted up a little letter that says, yes, we've reviewed it, and all they're putting on is the name, so we really only have to verify their name. They're not writing a story about each guy or their family or anything else. So it's and it's pretty interesting. So, and then they're going to have a big ceremony whenever they dedicate this memorial. I'm not sure when that's planned for, but that's one thing we're working on in our communications. That's all I have.
We're all getting older. We'd all like a facelift. And that's what the essay contest committee did. We did a facelift. We'd had the same flyer for 14 years and said, you know what, it's time to fix this and make it a little bit more exciting. Well, one of the things that we did as a board was up the prize money, which is a big deal when you're talking to these young people. And we started to solicit funds. We asked people for donations. We have one business made a donation. Lewis and Clark, no, Lewis and Grant. You know where our mind is, not there. Lewis and Grant Auctions made a good donation toward the essay contest, which has helped us increase the level of the prize money. And we have been beating the bushes, so to speak, now to get these flyers out recently. Sharon and I went to the Cold Spring Library to address homeschoolers. And we were very impressed with their knowledge of Kentucky history, considering some of them don't have people who were born here. So we were able to heighten their interest, and they were interested in this contest. So hopefully that we will see them in the contest before it's over. That's what I have now. To do the Benton?
Yep.
Okay.
Please do.
And I'll do the refugee part. We didn't need a facelift for that. But several months ago, we decided that we would make a Grand Select book for the celebration of Grand Select veterans. And I know Marcia's not here tonight, but I really want to thank her again, Marcia Barbian, because she's been working with me on the Veterans Collection. We sat and we went through over 14,000 names looking for those Grand Select veterans to put in a separate book that we took to the celebration. I could not have done it without her. And also updated the Purple Heart list, which was great, and then we put it all back together. So in December, because of that, we added 54 veterans to our collection, bringing the total to 14,265. And we're going to run out of room one of these days. We're going to have to rejuggle the books somehow. Spread them out, because we just keep adding and adding everything. It's a wonderful thing. So that takes care of that.
In. I called him and we met on, that was on Friday, we met on Saturday, and he's getting started. He's going to start researching all the items in our museum center and making tags for them. We have tags on some of the stuff, but there's a whole lot of stuff out there that's really interesting, but we don't have tags on it, so nobody really knows exactly what it is. So I haven't told Chris yet, but this is just an incredible operation that he's taking on. But I think he's aware of that, and he's taking it a little piece at a time, and we're going to start getting some tags on some of that stuff. So I'm excited to have him. So when you run into him, he's this guy right here. Just give him a good welcome. We announced last month the website is uploaded now. Everything is live on there. The store is live. We had a training session this past Monday, and so you're going to start seeing some more information on there. You know, the guy who did all that had loaded everything, but we hadn't really updated some stuff. We didn't know how to do it, and I wasn't going to use him to do all that. So we now know how to do it. So we'll start putting more and more information on there about our meetings that are coming up, things that are in the news, all that kind of stuff. So keep checking the website frequently. Mark couldn't be here tonight. They are on their way up to Michigan. But he said the Christmas tree fundraiser, he said we have 15 signed up for this year so far. Okay, is that about right, Glenn? Okay. So that's more than last year. So the front yard of the courthouse is going to be a little bit brighter than it was last year. Ken, you want to do a quick recap?
Years of September 17th. We've been working on planning for this for just about a year. My biggest worry from day one was what was the weather going to be like, well, it turned out to be an absolutely beautiful day. So we had 800 to 1,000 show up that day. It was beyond anything I could ever hope for. We gathered a lot of information, met a lot of friends. A lot of people came back to town that lived down in the Alvin area. Overall, the entire day was very, very well attended, and everybody enjoyed what they're doing. So next month, I'm giving a talk on the history of Grand Select.
They know how to pull it off. We had over 100 people there signed up, not counting the staff and everybody. Just 100 people signed up for the picnic, and it went without a hitch. I mean, it was, you two were there.
Yep.
I think everybody had a good time.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a table there that was really, really busy. You know, St. Elizabeth was there, and all the normal, the ones selling Medicare insurance and all that stuff were there. But we had a lot of people coming to our table to find out about the history of Wilder and stuff. The Campbell County Senior Picnic was pretty much the way it is every year. It's always fun. There's a lot of people there. This year we took yearbooks as opposed to our photo albums, and I think they just had a really, really good time looking at some of the old yearbooks that were there, and I was absolutely amazed. It could have been an OLP reunion there. I think we counted a dozen people that came through from OLP. It was just incredible.
And they all wanted their Ave,
Yeah.
which was their yearbook, except it wasn't a yearbook.
Every one of us said, we didn't have a yearbook and we said, we know.
We do have some of them in our library, but we didn't take them with us, so they couldn't see them.
We did do the Newport Arts and Music Festival. I wasn't expecting a whole lot out of it, and it met my expectations, but we had one really, really neat story. Do you want to?
Steve said, we've started taking yearbooks. We did take a couple of photo albums, and there was a lady who went through every page of the photo albums, the two big Newport ones that we took.
And found neighbors that
She
she grew
knew
up with.
all these people, and we're like, oh gosh, well, give us their names. Well, they were the ones that we already knew their names. She didn't know the people who we want to find out who they are. But anyway, she was real thrilled to see those. But then this other family came through. They looked at the yearbooks. It was a mother and her daughter and her son, and they were grown, teenagers or young adults. And the daughter said, can I see that yearbook? And it was an extra one that I had taken with us. Sometimes we take duplicates that we give away if people really knew somebody or they graduated from that year and they don't have their yearbook. She said, oh, that's the year that we think my grandpa graduated. And she looked through it, and there he was, and her mother was actually in tears because her dad had recently died, and they didn't have this yearbook. We said, it is yours. And they were so thankful and so grateful. And it's just makes you feel good when that's kind of the things we want to do, you know.
I told him that's why we do what we do. I mean, when we can connect people like that, it really gives you a good feeling. But this woman was just in tears. She was so happy to find this. They found a picture of her father. He played basketball for Newport, and they found a picture of him with the basketball team, and you know, some kind of a sports picture. And she was just so touched. And then when Jan said, well, here, it's an extra, you go ahead and take it. Oh my God, you would have thought we gave him the world. It was really neat.
That's the good part about it. But the increase in membership that I mentioned, from whatever Richard reported to the 311, most of that came from the
From the 4 events that we've done.
4 events that we just did in September and October.
Yeah.
So we're out there trying, you know, and people are responding.
Yep.
So,
Okay. I'm just going to touch on this briefly. You'll hear more about this next month. But we have a new fundraiser that's coming up at the end of the year. I don't know how it's going to go. This is our first one. We're doing an ugly Christmas sweater fundraiser. Okay? The deal is, I think, Jan, you said you had 5 or 6 ugly Christmas sweaters in your closet. Most everybody has them. You take a picture of yourself, your family, you know, whoever you want. And we're going after a lot of the local businesses to do this for their whole team, restaurants and things like that. You're going to upload those to our website. That's going to start November 7th through the end of November. And then in December, on December 1st, they're all going to start being live. and people can vote on who has the ugliest Christmas sweater. It costs $2 for a vote. Okay? Well, that's how we're going to make our money on it. I was encouraged, when we were at the senior picnic, I talked to Angelo Penque, the mayor of Cold Spring, and I said, let me just ask, would you consider doing this? He said, absolutely, we'll do that for you. I said, okay. So today when I picked up the key for here, I talked to, I always laugh, Chuck Norris. He's the assistant administrator here. And I said, tell me, do you think you'd do this for us, Chuck? He said, you bet we will. We said, it'll go out on Facebook, it'll go out on our website, and we'll try to get all our residents to vote for us. And I said, I don't care if you just get your mayor, if you get council, if you get your staff people, whatever it is, but I want to get all the cities to do that, which is how we can reach everybody in the county. And if this works, I think we can raise a lot of money doing this. There's a group in Scotland that raises money for the Save the Children Foundation. Well, last year they did something similar to this. They raised 4.4 million pounds, which is $5.5 million last year, doing ugly sweaters. So there's the potential to raise a whole, I don't think we're going to reach that goal, okay? But there's the potential to raise a whole bunch of money doing this and have a little fun with it. You know, if it's a little restaurant that puts their picture out there, somebody's going to come in and say, hey, I saw your picture, well, vote for me then, you know, and they're going to get ribbed for it and all that kind of stuff. So I think it should be fun. Yesterday, what's today? Thursday? No, Tuesday, I sent letters out to about 130 or 140 businesses that really wouldn't benefit from doing this, and they're larger businesses in the county, asking if they would be sponsors for this. So people like General Cable, you know, they don't really benefit from this, but if they can be a sponsor, then we'll put their logo on all the digital stuff that we do, you know, all the print stuff, and get them some recognition as well. Real quick, First Baptist Church in Newport is closed. Okay, it's really unfortunate. The guy told me in the 50s and 60s they had 700 to 800 families that were members. At their last service, they had 10 people there. And, I mean, it just fell apart. Right at 8th and York. Right catty corner from York Street Cafe. But remember, we had a meeting there. When was that? 5 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. The nice thing is, somebody took the time and set up a church history room there. They called us, thanks to Joe Manning, they called us, and we are getting everything out of their history room, which has all sorts of church records and all sorts of information about when the church was built, when it was expanded, when it was this, when it was that, going all the way back to the 1890s. So that's a real benefit. We picked up some of it, and there's 2 more filing cabinets that we're picking up Monday morning. Okay, so that's a good thing. Also got a call from a guy by the name of John Schwartz, who runs the University of Cincinnati Communiversity program, which is their, what do they call it, adult education program, their ongoing education program. And they're doing a series sometime in the spring on bourbon in the area, hot topic. So anyway, I met with him and we're going to become a part of that. So we'll probably have a meeting. Remember the meeting that we were supposed to have with Bob Batchelor on the Bourbon King on George Remus right before COVID hit? We had 300 people signed up to go to that meeting. And we never had it because of COVID. So we've talked to Bob. He's probably going to come back into town. He's subsequently moved to somewhere in North Carolina. He'll come back into town, do that meeting, and we'll connect with all the community people and do a combination meeting. So that'll be good. Question for you. Somebody asked me the other day. We said something. We were talking about the Kentucky Historical Society, and I said, you know, I have never been down to the museum down there, and I need to go. Conversation continued and continued, and I said, maybe we ought to do a bus trip. Just show of hands, how many people think they'd be interested in going to the Historical Society in Frankfurt? Okay, a lot of interest. Okay, maybe in the spring, okay? After the flu and COVID and everything is done for the couple little things, and then we'll get Lee started here. Fraser Museum in Louisville is doing a county story project, and they have asked us to be involved in that. They've asked all 120 counties to be involved, so we're deciding on a topic for that, and we'll send a story to them and let them put that up. 2025 is forever away from now. It's the 250th anniversary, except for 2026 is. It's the 250th anniversary of the United States, though. Kentucky Historical Society is already starting the planning on that. Paul, anything you want to say? Paul went to the meeting.
Everybody that this is happening in order to make a report to present to the legislature in order to get some money in the 2023 and 2024 legislature sessions, because they want, again, they want to know what type of projects we want to do in 2026 to celebrate the 250th anniversary, and also to show our place in that history. And
They want to show the importance of Kentucky in the United States.
also the importance of, like, say, Campbell County, and we've got a lot of stories because we were here, or there were people here.
Yeah.
You know, paving the way in all three counties. From the log homes, and of course we've got all sorts of roads and things like that.
Oh yeah.
And particularly, I think there was some discussion while I was there about the importance of the waterways in the settlement. And of course, hey, we're right on the Ohio River. We've got the Licking, which goes down into central Kentucky, and we've got a lot of interesting settlements that we could put together a lot of stories.
Yeah.
So this is going to be multi-person, multi-organization to put to work, and I think the Campbell County Historical Society can do a great overview of putting together what we need to showcase for Campbell County, particularly like the roots of Grants Lick and some other places here in Campbell County.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to shut up now.
Sure.
Did you say you're glad? I know it's difficult, okay? And let me introduce to you Mr. Lee Hite. Lee is on the board of directors of the Voice of America Museum. So now you're going to listen to his voice for a while, and he'll tell you all about the museum up there, and we'll touch on a number of other different topics. So please welcome Lee Hite.
Thank you, Steve, and welcome everyone. Glad you're here tonight, and thank you for the invitation to be here. I'm going to stand over here to stay out of your way of the screen. Just a real quick introduction. I never worked for the Voice of America. TV station in San Francisco, KGDI, that had a pretty good sized transmitter. They had a 50,000 watt transmitter, and they also leased the GE station. And so those two stations started broadcasting American message the American version of democracy, if you will. For the record, there were a series of other stations, NBC, CBS, Westinghouse, but they were fairly small, 10,000 watt. They were leased, they were given suggested content, but they were not a big player in the international world. So if we come toward the end of 1941, just prior to the start of the Pearl Harbor event, this is the way the world looked. Basically, the United States had 2 effective transmitters on the air, the biggest one here in Cincinnati, and the next one out in the San Francisco area, while Germany had 68 mature, effective transmitters broadcasting to Germany and the rest of the world. Russia had hundreds of them, literally. Japan had 42, China had 50. And so the world was very skilled at pushing out their propaganda, their version of their democracy. And the wake-up call comes 1942 or 1941 with Pearl Harbor. And at that point, Roosevelt said, okay, enough of what the legislature has required. He said, we're going to get into the broadcast business. They didn't build anything. They didn't own anything. There wasn't any big transmitters. And you couldn't just walk over and turn a transmitter on. So what they did was they had already leased WLWO. They came in and 100% took over WLWO and provided content for it. And that became 79 days after Pearl Harbor. That went on the air as the official VOA transmitter and transmitted the first messages for the Voice of America. The beginning culture of the Voice of America was truthful broadcast, tell the truth and let the world decide. Contrary to what Roosevelt wanted a propaganda station, but he made a mistake and hired the wrong people. And consequently, he got people that said, no, we're going to tell the truth. In fact, the first 2 years of broadcast by the Voice of America, all the news was bad. We're losing the war, and we're losing it big time. And they would report how many airplanes were down, how many tanks were lost, how many soldiers were lost, how many battles were lost. And so the news was actually pretty bad, coming out of Voice of America, of all things. And when the war turned, and the United States started winning various battles of the Bulge, etc., they also reported that. And so VOA very quickly earned the reputation of telling the truth. The other thing that went on at that time, during the war, all reporters had to have three verifiable sources for everything that went on the air. After the war, that was relaxed down to 2 sources. And still today, everything that goes out on the air has to have 2 verifiable sources that go on the air, and they still play by, it's kind of what I call the old Walter Cronkite reporting, just facts straight at you, tell the truth and let your audience decide. So what WLWO actually did was they broadcast shortwave radio, and they had several antennas. They pointed to Europe, North and South Africa, and North and South America. The red lines are shortwave, and as I said, we partnered with BBC. The blue line over in Europe was they would pick up our shortwave signal, and then they would push it out on either what we call medium wave or long wave. Medium wave is the AM broadcast station, WLW, WCKY, etc. And then there was another broadcast station called long wave, which is below that. That's how the message got out there. So it was powerful, particularly what BBC rebroadcast. And we put a signal in Germany's backyard that was absolutely amazing. During Hitler's speeches, almost every speech, he would say, don't listen to those Cincinnati liars, because he couldn't stop it. Radio is antenna to antenna. It's from our transmitting antenna or BBC's antenna to your radio. Nothing in between. And so the most he could do is try to counter it and just say, don't listen to it. Well, we celebrated an anniversary here a couple of years ago, so we had a Cincinnati Liars lager made at a local microbrewery down the road, and it sold very well. But that was tagline that the station was absolutely just drop dead proud to own, still own it today, that you could put that strong a signal into Germany. The other thing that went on, and I said there were secrets, there were quite a few secrets. When you put on a powerful broadcast station, you're broadcasting America's voice, but you can also use that signal for other purposes. And one of the things the government did that was very, very secret, we just found out not too long ago, that back in 1926, I believe it was, they embedded an employee in WLWO that was what's called a hyperpolyglot. Hyperpolyglot is a person who can speak, read, write, and teach more than 12 languages. And Octavio Bermudez was one of these rare geniuses. It's a genius in language, not the Einstein kind of genius, but it's a language genius. Eventually could do over 50 languages, and they're very rare around. They actually have plaques for the hyperpolyglots around the world. And why do you do that? Why do you put a hyperpolyglot in a shortwave station? Well, it turns out we had a spy network. We had a very slow communication system to the spy network, and it was not very good. And they needed to increase the speed at which secret information flowed back and forth. And this is another whole subject, way bigger than what we've got time to talk tonight. But they put together a communication network over the radio that was coded. It used a secret code that was unbreakable, still unbreakable today, and would push out secret messages. The hyperpolyglot could push it out in a whole bunch of different languages, so you didn't have to push it out in English. You could push it out in Nigerian, as long as you had someone at the other end. And so it became very, very effective method of communication. If you go to our website, there's a paper I wrote a couple years ago called Lies, Spies, and Secrets, and it's all about the secrets that went on with the secret languages through the WLW right here in Cincinnati. Let's change subjects a little bit and talk about building out the Voice of America. What happened right after Pearl Harbor is when Roosevelt got, of course, the big wake-up call, was not in the broadcast business, said, oh my, we've got to get on the air, we've got to get on the air quickly. He called back all the big broadcasters, NBC, CBS, Croslake Broadcasting, etc., and had a big meeting and said, okay, I need someone to build high-power shortwave transmitters. Who can do it? Dead silence in the room. Not a single broadcaster raised their hand. They took a coffee break, came back, and President Crosley raised his hand and said, Mr. President, I think we can do it. He came home with a one-page contract to build 6 high-power shortwave transmitters and 22 high-efficiency antennas. There was no price tag. It was a one-page, go get it done, you can get it done now, and cost was not an object. So they started building out what we call Bethany Station up there in Westchester, and it went on the air then in 1944. In February 1st, 1944, went on the air, and they had to design the transmitters. They had never been built. They never had built 200,000 watt transmitters. All of that got tested and built at that facility. When that went on the air then, the government duplicated that capability in California. They put in Delano and Dixon, California, and the 3 stations there then carried the workload all the way through World War II and through part of the Cold War up until Vietnam. And when Vietnam kicked in is when the government said, whoa, we need a lot more broadcast power. And so they put on Greenville, North Carolina, and they're huge. We took up a square mile. We literally filled a square mile with antennas and a big transmitting plant. Greenville takes up 3 square miles. They had 2 big buildings. They had 250,000 watt transmitters. They had 500,000 watt transmitters. I mean, it was just the biggest thing VOA ever built out. But the 5 of us thing carried the workload from Vietnam all the way up until we were decommissioned in 1994. This is a little better view of what the facility looked like, just the front end of the property. We can't see the back end of the square mile. But if you drove up and down I-75 for any reason at night on your way to Dayton, you'd see all kinds of red lights over there. Nobody knew what they were, but that's who we were. Had 7 major target locations, and so there were high efficiency antennas pointing directly to those targets, and that became the broadcast audience during the life of the station. Switching a little bit to how VOA operated, right at the beginning, as soon as they went on the air with WLWO in Cincinnati, they did the broadcast out of New York. It was just a building with plain rooms with some acoustical tile on the wall and the audio. They did start right off early, translating over 24 different languages, and so there were a lot of people, a huge number of people. Just to put one language on the air takes at least 10 people, just to get the copy written. Then in the after the broadcast is generated, it's pushed out to the transmitting stations. They had a big command center at the VOA Master Control, and that would push it out to Cincinnati or California or North Carolina, and we would put it on the air. With all that broadcast power, in a 24-hour period, the station could push out 700 hours of programming. We could do 8 hours, or we could do 40 hours in an 8-hour period, as could the 2 stations in California. And Greenville could push out 140 hours in an 8-hour period. So over a 24-hour period, and this was a 24-hour operation, over that period we could push out over 700 hours of programming in the various target locations. The one thing that we probably don't think about is when you put all this huge broadcasting power on the air, how do you get an audience? Who knows you're there? Just because you got a transmitter and a signal, who knows? Well, you don't. But the United States had just an amazing secret weapon. And you probably won't see this coming, but the secret weapon the United States had was the music of jazz. American jazz was revered all over the world. It was free-flowing. It represented the freedom of the United States. Most countries tried to emulate jazz and could not even come close. Some countries even outlawed it, that you got caught listening to jazz, to take your radio away. And so VOA very early on knew that, put it on the air, and they put on a huge program, the Willis Conover Jazz Hour. And all the normal jazz performers, from Fats to all of them, were big stars on the Voice of America. In fact, Willis Conover was invited to various countries to premiere American jazz because it was illegal in their country. So that's how we got an audience. Was a huge step in generating an audience. You have an hour jazz program, and then at the end you put in 5 minutes of news or broadcast or bulletins of some sort. The other subject that was huge was health and welfare. All the other broadcasters, all the way through Europe, China, Asia, well, they were broadcasting and pushing out their propaganda. They were not pushing out helpful human information. VOA started pushing out health and welfare, and that became huge. People just wanted to take care of themselves. They wanted to not be sick. They wanted clean water. They wanted better health care. And so they could learn over the radio some of those techniques, and that also generated a huge audience. So eventually, the VOA moved from New York into Washington, D.C., which it is now, and we still have, if you will, radio broadcast. Most everything most of the transmitting plants have been decommissioned. We still have 42 transmitters on the air, but we have a large YouTube presence, a large social media presence, and a very large operation. The impact of the Voice of America was large in World War II and was much larger during the Cold War. we go through any of these wars, including the Cuban Missile Crisis, what we did not know, because we're not broadcasting to the United States, you didn't know what was going on behind the scenes when the Cuban Missile Crisis was going on. And there was an enormous amount of broadcast going on about strategic items. And so the better you inform the people, the better your chances of winning the battle, if you will. Maybe now is a good time to mention, when I said that Roosevelt wanted the propaganda station, but he hired the wrong people, and they got people that told the truth. Well, Roosevelt eventually got his propaganda station. He was out of office, but he had set in motion the wheels to get that, and it eventually came into being. It's called Radio Free Europe. And Radio Free Europe is, in fact, an American propaganda station. It's headquartered in the Czech Republic and funded by the CIA. And their operation is 100% to support our military effort. Now, this was VOA quietly supporting it. But Radio Free Europe will openly, and it's not all bad. It's to aid in military victory. It could be. They did it for Korea and Vietnam. They've been very active in all of the conflicts. So, just for the record, yeah, Roosevelt did get his propaganda station, but it was not Voice of America. Switching subjects a little bit, what happened when Vietnam kicked in and we put the big station in Greenville, North Carolina, is the broadcasts were just like I'm talking tonight. I'm not particularly careful about the words I choose. I may use an idiom, I may not. And what they found out in that time was that American language does not translate very well. They were translating in over 47 different languages, and it just doesn't translate. These are just some real simple words that do not translate. Russia does not have the word the for science, and you can go on and on. There's a huge list of words that do not translate. So VOA tried to fix that problem. They went to 2 universities and said, would you take our dictionary and fix it down to where it just 100% translates to these languages? 2 separate universities. They both came back and just said, are you nuts? It just can't be done. And so VOA went in the back room, and in a few weeks they did it themselves. And in that period, they moved the 40,000 word dictionary down to 1,500 words that will 100% translate to 47 different languages. That's not very many words, but you can count. If you write copy, it will translate. Nowadays, it was called, back then it was called Special English. Now they changed the name to called Learning English, but it's the same thing. And the gentleman down at the bottom is Steve Ember. He just retired from 25 years of writing Special English for VOA. And we're in pretty close contact. I was trading emails the last couple of days with Steve. And one of his comments was, people don't realize how hard it is to write a story when you only got 1,500 words to pick from. He said, how do you make it interesting? I don't have all the adjectives and the language that I need to write a story. But he wrote some amazing stories on those 1,500 words. Today they're translating in over 60 languages and dialects. It's a huge effort to try to communicate because we're a lot more accessible around the world. So that is a huge effort on the agency's part. The Special English is available. You can see that dictionary on Wikipedia. You can buy these books off Amazon. For every language that is translated, there's a translation book available that you can purchase in whatever language you want to do the translation in. As I mentioned, the internet was starting to build out, and by 1994, the shortwave stations were being decommissioned. We were decommissioned up here, and the same year, Delano and Dixon, California were decommissioned. Part of North Carolina was shut down. They have 2 sites. They shut down site A, but site B is still on the air. And it's the only shortwave station broadcasting in the United States for Voice of America. We have other relay stations around the country. We have 6 other transmitting plants that are transmitting, and about, if you add up all the transmitters, about 42 transmitters or something. But we're on satellites. They run over 10 satellites. We're on over 3,000 FM stations, huge social media presence, and all over the internet. Africa can get the internet. They don't have an infrastructure, but they have poles with solar panels, and they pick up the VOA signal from a satellite, and then they have high-power Wi-Fi, and you can be in the middle of Africa and pick up a Wi-Fi signal. It's that easy. The other thing that happened is, I remember I said that the commercial broadcast got through Congress early, and the Smith-Mutton Act prevented broadcasting to the United States. And the internet was shut off to the United States. In '94, you could not get the internet broadcast. Everything the VOA does now, of course, on the internet, but you couldn't get it here in this country. In 2013, they finally got that changed, and so the first time you could pick up VOA on your home computer was 2013, and so now it's all over the place. There's 3 main internet sites. One is called VOA News that you can pick up, and everything they broadcast is on that site. There's another one called Inside VOA, which is special English, but it's human interest kind of stories that are done in special English. Special English is 9 lines. It's very slow. They slow it down over 30%. That's what they call 9 lines per minute. And it's, if you're learning English, if you're learning a foreign language, you got to slow it down. You can't talk like I'm talking tonight, you know. So that's the second site, and there's also a lot of different categories. We take democracy, we don't even think about democracy, but if you're in another country, you don't understand our democracy. It's hard for us to realize that we're 4% of the world's population. We're a big country, we're very wealthy, but we're only 4%. So you've got 96% of the world out there that doesn't necessarily understand how our democracy works. There's also another site here called 51 VOA, and that's the 51 languages that VOA translates into. So if you happen to speak Dutch and you want a Dutch broadcast, it'll be there. Or Nigerian, you can pick it up. The other thing that went on is we all in this room probably have lived through the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and the turbulent times that went on in this country with a lot of social economic unrest. And by early 1990, some bias had crept into the broadcast. There was a high code of honor that said that you report the truth and don't editorialize. Editorializing started in early 1990. Congress had a hissy fit over that and passed what was called the VOA firewall. And in 1994, that became law and is still in effect today. Essentially, it says no one can change a reporter's story, not the reporter's boss, not the director of the VOA, and not the President of the United States. And all 3 have tried, and they've tried very recently to make it their broadcast station. It's not. It's a completely independent agency funded by Congress. Every year, they have to go to Congress every year for money. As opposed to Radio Free Europe, it's an automatic funding through the CIA. They don't have to keep going back for money. But that firewall still stands today. The presidents have been invited to do an address over the radio station, and sometimes more than once during their presidency, but it's a democracy broadcast. It's not a political type broadcast. Earlier, I had this map up there about no free press available in those areas. Well, how do you overcome that? Well, I want to talk about this word. How do you stop Voice of America? Well, you jam their signal. And jamming was a huge business in Russia, China, and Asia. I'll pick on Russia here. They put together a huge technical training school, the Leningrad Communication Institute, and all the men are fighting, and this became an all-women effort. women went through the technical school, became very good at understanding how radio works and operating big transmitters. And an example here is Lithuania. This lady up in the left-hand corner is at what we call a receiving station. She's listening for any foreign broadcast to come into Lithuania. She's 15 miles from the transmitting plant because you can't put a receiver and a transmitting plant next to each other, too much power. So she picks up somebody that's VOA, BBC, or somebody that's coming into her country. And she calls over to this other lady, who has a huge transmitting plant, and she will dial up a frequency to block that foreign broadcast. And what is it? It's a buzzer. It's just a buzzer, or some weird signal. Anything can interfere with your signal. And the two of them really get into it. Oh, I found another one. She'll call over and she'll tune up another transmitter, and it's got to be a cat and mouse back and forth. But jamming was a really big business in that, and that's how they tried to counter a free press. I want to switch now a little bit to immigration. Everything that Voice of America did circled around immigration when they talked about American democracy, and what we did caused a lot of immigration. And one of the best demonstrations of that turns out, little did we know, to be our museum. We're up here in Westchester. You would think most of the people that came in the museum lived in the area. We started collecting zip codes from people that come in the museum just 4 months ago. This is brand new. This is 4 months worth of data. And 60% of the people that come in the museum do not live in the tri-state area, Ohio, Kentucky, or Indiana. It's a destination for them. They drive in from out of town. The long distance ones, West Coast, East Coast, they didn't come in to see us. They have family or friends here, but they said, first time I get to Cincinnati, I want to go to the VOA Museum, because they either immigrated because of it, or they have someone very close to them, and they want to find out what this was all about. And so we were quite surprised at the attendance in the museum. The thing that we did kind of inadvertently about 10 years ago was, as immigrants came through the museum, we would collect their story. And this is a gentleman, Igor, from Russia, owns a HVAC business there in Westchester. Just highly appreciative to be in this country, and some of his comments there about crops never failing, airplanes never crashing. That's all they knew in Russia. They never heard the truth. And the same with Czechoslovakia, the professor over at Miami University. And we used that in promotion in the museum. There's a young lady here from China that very appreciative of the information. It's the only time they find out there's something other than repression, something other than communism. So I said, we ought to start collecting immigration stories. I thought that was a great idea. Little did I know. So at the same time, it turns out that Professor Johnson over here at Northern Kentucky University was getting ready to teach a class on public history. We accidentally met each other. It was not planned. Charlene will attest to that. Anyway, we partnered up, and what she was going to bring to the party was she was going to provide students to do our interviews. That's great. I didn't have to do it. I didn't have to get people to do the interview. Professor Johnson is going to do it. My task was to get immigrants. I thought it was a piece of cake. They're in the museum every weekend. They're telling us their story, how the VOA changed their life. How hard can this be? So, as we meet immigrants, I start asking them, would you tell us your story? We're going to be doing some oral histories. How about being part of the program? No, don't want to do that. I went through 25 rejections. 25 immigrants that refused to be interviewed. I'm doing something wrong, right? So I hook up with these other people. We posted on our Facebook page We hooked up with World Affairs Council in Cincinnati. They have an email distribution list of 5,000 immigrants in the Cincinnati area. She was very, very cooperative. She sent out a request to all 5,000. We have a large email list of over 2,000. We sent out a request for immigrants. And then I got a hold of some of the specialty organizations. Out of all of that, how many immigrants do you think I got? I got 0. Okay, so there's something really serious going on here that I don't understand. In the museum, one of the things that happened to me that just scared the daylights out of me was I had a gentleman, and I don't remember exactly what country he was from. He'd been in the museum for about an hour. We were near the end of the tour, and he was telling us his story, and I said, oh, that's great, that's a great story. How about being part of our oral history project? We'd like to record your story. His personality changed. He put his arms up and backed away, and he said, no, not me. His demeanor changed. He stopped. He and his wife left the museum immediately. And that was just a huge wake-up call that we're missing a whole lot of what was going on here. And what we're missing is that the line between legal and illegal is being terribly, terribly blurred because of what's going on at the southern border. All these people came in through Ellis Island. They're here legally. They've got all the papers. No one is going to send them home. But they're scared to death of us canceling, with our cancel culture, sending them back home. And they refuse to be interviewed. Shirley can attest, I finally gathered 6 people to be interviewed. I mean, we had tens and tens. I got 6. We did the interviews. Shirley did one, as did the other students. We did not realize until the interviews were done, because we learned this in the interview, that 5 of the 6 people that were interviewed had a PhD. We didn't ask for it. We didn't know they had it. And Professor Johnson caught that right away. And basically it said that the better education people had, the more comfortable they were with their immigration status, the more comfortable they were with their life. And they were great interviews. I mean, they were very open. We learned a lot. We got a nice profile. But it was a real demonstration and a wake-up call for us about what's happening in our democracy. The other thing that's going on that you may already know about and you may not is this whole business about misinformation, fake news, whatever you want to call it. All by itself, it's harmless until somebody acts on it. And you've seen mass shootings as a result of misinformation. And it's getting so serious with young people, they don't have the maturity this room has. They can't sit back and sort things out necessarily. And young people are being damaged by it because of misinformation, bad information. And consequently, the state of Illinois has 2 years ago passed legislation that requires a class in every high school on what's called media literacy. And they literally spell out, I realize that print's a little too small to read, but they spell out 5 things that must be taught in high school regarding media literacy. How to tell the truth, how to get different sources, how to sort through it, how important is it, et cetera, et cetera. And so when we get to the point of having to legislate that you have to take a media literacy course, helps me understand what was happening because I couldn't get immigrants to be interviewed. So not my area of expertise, it was just a large wake-up call. So that kind of wraps up my presentation. I tried to just hit some of the highlights. If you get a chance, come up to the museum. We've got a lot of things to see up there, and we're open on the weekends. We're always looking for volunteers, so if you or if you have friends or family living up in the area that are looking for something to do, I'd love to talk to them, tell them to get a hold of us. We'd love to talk to them. So that wraps it up. We're open noon to 4 p.m. Saturday and Sunday. You're welcome, come on up, take a look at the museum. And with that, questions, comments, concerns? Charlene?
You told us one story about the radio guy. I want you to tell us another story that you told my class about the immigrant women who came from Asia and how they felt coming to America.
Okay, I think I know what you're talking about. We give a tour, and one of the areas we wind up in is in the control room, where they control the high-power transmitters. And I had a group in there. I got actually a couple stories. I had a group in there, and there were a Chinese family there. Is that? I don't know if that's the one you want. And I'm explaining what VOA did, and she starts crying. And I'm going, oh man, I said something I shouldn't have. I didn't, you know, I violated her culture. I couldn't understand what I did. So she composed herself, she apologized, and her message was just unbelievably important. She said, I never realized how much America cared about me. She took it very personal. She listened on a little dinky radio, this big, you know, it's not a very strong signal, it's staticky, but she listened. You don't know what's going on at the other end. When she got into our facility and just saw the size of the Bethany station up there in Westchester, for us to push out that signal to her little radio, she said, boy, you really cared. And then when she found out about the other 18 facilities we have around the world, she just broke down because they don't realize the amount of work the United States put into communicating our version of democracy to the rest of the world. The second story is we had a group of Holocaust survivors come in from Russia. They came in after the wall came down. There were about 40 of them, and wanted to tour the museum. And they were all age 60 and above at that point. And they came in with too old, if you pardon me, they said they're too old to learn the language, so the only language they spoke was Russian. They came in with two translators, an older lady and a younger lady, different dialects. So everything I said got translated twice. And when you see people like that come in and they start telling you their story, that the reason they're here was the Voice of America, the radio broadcast. It just leaves you going home that day just glad to be an American. You know, we just don't understand how much our democracy is not understood around the country. So is that kind of what, okay. Okay, well, thank you very much. Appreciate the invitation tonight.
I had no idea whatsoever. Lee, thank you ever so much. Very, very nice. I left something off before. It's November next month. That's elections. Anybody want to be on the board? Anybody want to be on the board?
Think about it, think about it.
We've got positions available, so if you're interested, just let me know, and I can put you on the ballot then, okay? Upcoming meetings, next month, we're going to listen to Ken talk about Grants Lick and the history of that. Quite a little community at one point in time, and there's some great stories there. December, we'll be here with our holiday social. And today I had a conversation with a guy who's going to be here in January. Actually, Sharon and Charlene ran into this fella. They were meeting with some homeschoolers for the essay contest. And this guy happened to be there, and they started talking to him. He's a model railroad, a model builder for all that. I had a conversation with him today. He's a history buff. And he's doing a model railroad setup right now, 3 rooms. I mean, this guy does some big time stuff. So he's going to come and talk to us in January on model railroading, and I don't think I'll be able to keep him from bringing in some history things too. He kept bringing that up today. So Anyway, his name's Lawrence Goodridge. So that'll be good. I told him I'd put a plug in. He is going to have an exhibit at the Cold Spring branch of the library December 1st through December 16th. Okay, and so you can get a preview of what he does there. And on December 3rd, he's actually having an event, and he's going to go and run the trains, and they've got music and stuff for the kids and all sorts of good stuff on December 3rd. I haven't solidified the dates yet, but I'm also working with Lewis and Grant, our new essay contest business sponsor, that's going to do a presentation. They are auctioneers down in Newport. They specialize in militaria and antique firearms and antique documents and papers. And the guy was out when I talked to him, or when I called, so I'm supposed to hear back from him, I think, tomorrow or Monday. But we talked about maybe doing like an antique roadshow type of thing. So if anybody has any antique firearms, what have you, bring them in and they'll appraise them for you and tell you all about them. No ammunition here. No ammunition at all, okay? Bring the firearm, but leave the ammunition at home. Does anybody know about Vent Haven Museum? Has anybody been there? I've been trying to contact them. They're closed for remodeling until spring of next year, but I'd like to get them to come in. I just think it's a very unique museum. So I'm trying to set up a meeting with them. And then we've also got the thing with UC, with the communiversity, that we'll be setting up. And we're going to try to do that, I think, again, like at the Syndicate, what we were trying to do before. That's the end of my list. Mary? Anybody else have anything else they want to bring up tonight? Except Mary. No? All right then, let's close. And I thank you very much. Everybody be safe going home.